Ageism, it's really everywhere. Fighting it starts with yourself. And that's how, if I can get you to think about it and to pay attention, that's how we start to change the story.
Welcome to the Jocelyn Moore Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn Moore, and as always, we're here to inform, inspire, and entertain with dynamic conversations that matter. Today, we're diving into the topic of overcoming ageism in today's society. We welcome Dr. Corinne Auman, an expert in aging, a developmental psychologist, and author.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I want to start right now, since we have a little time. So, what childhood advice did you dismiss? But now, as an aging expert, you find yourself saying the exact same thing.
I think mostly I say things that my parents said to me when I've got teenagers at home, and I say the same sorts of things. They've got a ton of free time and they don't appreciate it. And that's the thing. And like, you have so much free time. You can do whatever you want with your time. And they're looking at it going, no, I'm in school and school is terrible and it takes up the whole day. And I'm like, you have no idea how good you have it.
I know they don't. They want to grow up so fast at once. I said, remember, when you grow up, you're adult now, you pay your rent and you have all these bills to pay and all this and so on and so on. It's for life.
Yeah.
No turning back.
So I don't, that's not something I guess I'm saying as an aging expert.
Well, I know you're not. Right. Okay.
But that is the thing that I find myself saying, thinking, I remember my mom saying that to me too. And at the time I was like, no, yeah. Like, I think you feel burdened by whatever's happening to you, no matter what age you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's all a journey. We're all on the same journey.
That's true. We are, right? Okay, now moving along. Regarding your book, Teenagers, telling a new story about aging, why did you feel it was important to write it?
Okay, so the backstory on this, my day job is I am a geriatric care manager. So I run an agency where we help typically adult children, but also sometimes spouses care for their aging loved ones. And when I started that business, I really thought I was going to be working with 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-old parents. And nothing is further from the truth. I am typically working with 70-year-olds who are caring for their 90-something-year-old parents. And going through that experience, watching how incorrect my assumptions were about who's aging and who needs care and how old they are, really helped me see that our conceptions about older adulthood have not changed, even though older adulthood itself has changed a lot. 60, it's very cliche, 50 is the new 40, that sort of thing. But really, 65 today is not what 65 was for your grandparents.
Right.
We are living much longer. We are living much healthier. And so it's a totally different experience of older adulthood than what most people realize. And so the goal of the book is to help people kind of reframe how they're thinking about those older adult years, or the teenager years, as I sometimes call them, to think about them not just as stereotypical, I'm going to get older and retire and, withdraw from the world and just garden or play golf or whatever my hobbies are, but to think of it as a time when you are still going to be active and engaged and healthy and wanting to do things, not wanting to slow down necessarily.
Right.
And, and that's not everybody needs to keep working, but it's you're still going to have a lot of energy and stuff you want to do. And we don't think about that time period in that way. And so then when people get there, they struggle because they're like, well, wait a minute. I'm 65 and society says I should be doing this.
Right.
But I feel like I'm in my prime. I feel like I feel great and I know a lot of stuff and I want to keep going. I saw a great video clip of Dolly Parton the other day, who is 80. And she was like, I don't have to, I'm too busy to sit around and think about getting old. But I think that's the different perspective. And so the goal of the book is to help people reframe it just the way I've had to reframe it as I've continued working with people and seeing how different the reality is from what I expected.
You're so right. I met this woman at the store about 2 days. Well, it was a Sunday, and she was working behind the counter. And I said, I love your hair. She had gray hair. I love your hair. And she had this jean jacket. And she said, my daughter keeps me up. If she see me dressing old, she would say, no. And she really looked good. She really looked good. I think I told you this a long time ago, weeks ago, that I had this godmother with my first cousin, and I think she passed when she was in her 80s. But anyway, she would dress sharp. Oh, my, you couldn't tell her nothing. She had the best looking legs, I tell you. Best looking legs. And she would have a little slit up her on the side of her dress, appropriate now. And I mean, she really looked good. She said, I am no old lady. I'm not going to dress like one. Okay. Let's moving on. As a founder of Choice Care Navigators, what's the purpose for your company?
So that's the geriatric care management company that I mentioned a minute ago. And so, our job is to help people navigate caring for aging loved ones and, to help them. Typically people call us in a crisis, so a very typical story is, mom was at home and she was living alone and everything was great and then there's been something that's happened and now everybody needs to know everything about Medicare and how to pay for home care or how to find a community or what do you mean Medicare doesn't pay for that? Just all these kinds of things. So we help people navigate those moments, but part of that too, I see the difference. This is part of what led to the book too. I see the difference in how people look at their own aging because people who are looking forward to growing older, they do all the planning and preparation. Like they do their will and they do their healthcare power of attorney and they do all their documents and financial planning versus the people who are afraid of aging. They don't want to be associated with those old people. That's, and they'll say things like, well, I'll do my documents when it's time, when I need to. And that burying your head in the sand leads to very negative outcomes because then when there is a crisis and everything needs to have already been decided or everybody already needs to know what you want or don't want, nobody knows anything because you said, I'm going to do it when it's time. And the time is now. My 18-year-old son, a week after he turned 18, we had him in the lawyer's office doing his healthcare power of attorney and his financial power of attorney, because that is something everyone should have as an adult. That is not something people just need to have because they are an older person. But I see how people fear aging and how that fear keeps them from doing what they need to do to actually make sure it's a good experience, right? To make sure it does go well.
I guess when society has a big handle in all of this, the way they treat people when they talk about aging.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
It has a lot. I remember you talking about wills. I didn't do my will at first because it was sort of scary. It's like, you're going to go one day, at any age. Death has no number, right? So when I finally went to lawyer's office to do my will, he said, why are you crying? I said, it's a will. It's so, it's so, well, I know I did the right thing. You
Yeah.
need this. You need to do this. And people are afraid.
Yeah. And, one of the ways to think about it is the will is not really for you.
Right.
The will is a gift you are giving to the people who love you, who are going to have just lost you.
That's right.
You're doing something for them.
There.
And that's the way to frame it, to help yourself get motivated to get there.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's not for me because I won't be here.
You won't be here.
And you have to do that because you know what happens. People be fighting, and you know how really people think about certain things when you gone, and then people get jealous. I'm supposed to have this. I'm supposed to have that. You have everything down
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Because some family members, excuse the expression, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, some people say, I'm not going to be here. I don't care. They can fight over it all they want.
That's kind of,
But if you do care, if you do love them, give them the gift of setting things out so that they don't have to argue about it and they don't have to question it.
You're absolutely right. Very good. Very good answers, doctor. Very good. How does your training as a developmental psychologist influence your approach to aging?
So when you do developmental psychology training, you have to specialize in an age group. So you can do kids, you can do adolescents, you can do adults. And so my specialty was older adults and aging. So that I've always been interested in working with older adults and with that time period in life. I think it influences it the most just in terms of kind of understanding, I have all the theoretical sort of research background, and I still love, even though I'm not in that research anymore because I'm running my business and doing all these other things, I still really enjoy getting into the research and reading the more recent studies and especially the studies on ageism and on cognitive bias and how the way people think impacts how they actually age. And so it certainly is most influential in terms of just keeping up with the most recent research on aging and kind of what's happening now. What do we understand now that maybe we didn't in the past?
So, people have lost the respect of older people.
Oh, well, you have to think about it like before we had the internet, before we had Google, older adults were the keepers of the knowledge. They were the ones who knew all the things and could pass that knowledge down to younger generations.
Right.
Well, now we have Google, we have the internet, and we don't go to our older individuals, even though they do still have a wealth of knowledge and experience. We don't go to them the way we used to because they're not the only keepers of the knowledge anymore. And so it has really shifted kind of that perspective on, what their role is and, how do we interact? How do we utilize? How do we value individuals as we age the way, in a respectful way, in a way that I don't want to say that we used to, because it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but how do we continue to keep older adults engaged with life, engaged with us, because they do still have a wealth of knowledge and experience and social skills that are difficult for younger generations.
You're certainly right. You talked about, well, you have to Google the internet, and younger people do not go to the older people for, but what they go to the older people for is grandkids, babysitting their grandkids. They do go. One woman told me, I would babysit when I went to babysit. I still have a life, and she travels.
Yeah.
I would tell you when I want to do it, not when you want me to do it.
Right.
So you have that. Now, how should we rethink the idea of retirement.
We'll go back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, how 65 today is not the 65 that your grandparents had. So a lot of people now are reaching what we think of as the traditional retirement age, around 65, and they're kind of looking around going, I'm in my prime. I feel
Right.
great. I want to keep doing this. Now, maybe they don't want to keep doing that same career, right? They're ready to retire from whatever that original career was. But when we think about retiring from that career, from that work, instead of thinking about, I'm just retiring, thinking about, this is the end of this chapter, what's next? And so when you stop working, you are still going to need intellectual stimulation, social stimulation. You're going to need a reason to get out of bed on a Wednesday morning. And so what is it that's going to fill your time and make you excited about getting out of bed on the Wednesday morning? And people don't realize how much of their intellectual and social engagement they get from work. But your brain does not want to sit around and just watch TV all day. Your brain wants to be challenged. In order for it to stay healthy, you need to stay engaged with life. You need to be talking to people. You need to be trying new activities. You need to be learning pickleball. You need to be doing whatever it is that interests you, but doing things that continue to challenge you and to make you learn new stuff. That is what's going to keep you healthy. And I think our kind of traditional view, I'm putting that in quotes, of retirement is, okay, you retire and then it's just unlimited leisure. You sit around and you do nothing, or you only do your golf or your fishing or whatever it is. And that gets boring really fast. So you're going to get to do those things. I think everybody wants more time for their leisure activities, but then what else are you going to do that's going to make you learn and grow and continue to be challenged and engaged with the world?
That's true. I tell you, when I retired, I found myself I'm busy more than ever.
And I
And
would
so,
say that is the new view. That is the
okay,
new experience of retirement, not the kind of stereotypical, I'm going to just, sit around and relax.
that's true.
I can't tell you how many people will say to me, I'm looking forward to retirement. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to do nothing.
That's going to change. Let me tell you. That's going to change. But doctor, I'm going to tell you this, doctor. There are some people who think, I know, when you retire, that you have nothing to do. Oh, could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? I didn't retire because of you, for me, right? And when they retire, they won't think the same. Oh no, I'll retire. I can't do that. I want to do what I want to do. But there
Sure.
are people who think that way. This woman who has grandkids, and the daughter always putting the grandkids on the grandmother, but that's the grandmother's choice if she didn't want to do it, But there are people who take advantage of people who retire. Think you owe them this, you owe them that. Don't you feel that way sometimes?
I
People feel that
certainly
way.
I see that. I mean, I certainly see grandparents who are, the expected babysitter, and they don't really
Mm-hmm.
get asked, things like that. I've certainly seen that. And I know many older people have said exactly what you said, in the sense that everybody thinks they've got nothing to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so don't you want to do this? Don't you want to do this? And that they are busier in retirement
It's true.
than they even were when they were working.
That's true. Now, how do we stop the best, most experienced workers from walking out of the door and retiring early?
So, I think the challenge for businesses, if you want to keep your experienced workers, is to offer flexibility. If people are approaching a retirement age, a lot of people don't want to just retire immediately. They kind of want to do what we would call a phased retirement, where
Mm-hmm.
maybe they cut back, they go half time, they start working from home 2 days a week, whatever it is, but they want a more flexible schedule. They want to have time to travel or do leisure activities. And so the more flexibility an employer can offer, the more likelihood of keeping those experienced workers longer if you're trying to do that. I think the bigger problem is kind of the opposite when people want to stay and the employers are going, oh no, we know you're about ready to retire. You can, go ahead and go. And people are like, no, I want to stay. And employers aren't continuing to train those individuals, continuing to offer them promotions or growth opportunities because they're saying, oh no, you're 55, you've got 1 foot out the door. And the employee's saying, no, I don't. What are you talking about?
1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the grave. As they would say, as we know, death has no number, right? What surprised you in your line of work, what you're doing now, from people? What people think about what a person of 70 or 80 should be doing?
The thing that I think surprises me the most actually is the way we want to separate ourselves from older people. Like it's like you're an adult and then at some point you magically become an older adult, and we can argue about what that date is. And we want to separate that ourselves from older people somehow. And it's almost like we somehow believe that this aging thing doesn't happen to us, right? Like it's not happening to me. And the way people are able to kind of separate that in their mind, right? To that when they talk about older people in a disparaging way, or when they're saying, oh, she's too old to wear that, or she's too old to do that, or whatever it is, that we don't see older adults as whole people, right? If I'm 80, I'm still 80 with the same interests and, hobbies and, intellectual skills, all these things. It's not like you somehow become an older adult and you become an alien. But we talk about older people like they are somehow a really separate group. And not only that, like they're all the same, right? Like that they're all cranky and they're not willing to learn. We have all these stereotypes about it. And, I'm aging, you're aging. We're all going to be older people. We're all teenagers in training, as I like to say. And you're still going to be an individual and a person when you get to be 75, 85, 95. That doesn't change. And so it really surprises me the kind of cognitive dissonance people have, the way they are able to separate themselves from this idea of older people, and that they themselves might one day be an older person.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Thinking about that. I remember years ago we were in the choir at church, and my cousin back in the day said, oh, I don't want to sing with the seniors. Now what happened? She became a senior. You see, just like what you just said. She became a senior. I remember my 4th grade teacher, Miss Pringle. That woman, she hasn't changed. She's deceased now, but she hasn't changed much. That woman looked the same. I mean, she looked good. I don't know how old she was when she passed. I think maybe she must have been in her 80s. But let me tell you, that woman looked good.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't see the wrinkles or nothing. I mean, she could dress. I saw her in the store one day, put me to shame. She looked real good in the jogging. Jogging suit. I don't know what I had on, but it didn't look too good. And I was looking embarrassed. And I still would say to her, hello, Miss Pringle. It brought me back to the 4th grade again. Hello, Miss Pringle. How are you doing? I always remember Miss Pringle. Always remember her.
Well, and I think you've brought up a couple of people around you who modeled for you how to be an older person that you wanted to be. They were
Right.
stylish, they're put together, they're not the stereotypical older person. And
No.
I think that's what we all need. We all need those role models that you want to look around for your role models
Right.
for the people to see who's doing it well, who is aging the way you want to age, and then model your older adulthood, your behaviors, your life choices after that person, so that that's the kind of same experience you're going to get to have.
Right. Oh, okay. Now, what should we know about senior living communities?
I mean, they're out there. I think
Right?
I think most people really ignore senior living communities until they are in a crisis and need one. And then it's kind of oh, I drove by that pretty place on whatever street. Wonder if that's the right fit. So there's so many different options out there in terms of different communities. But the biggest thing people ought to know is that Medicare does not pay for long-term care. And so you have to have long-term care insurance, or you have to have private pay, or there are some VA benefits. But if that is a possibility in your future, and it is for a lot of us, 7 out of 10 people will need some form of long-term care for at least some period of time. That is something you have to budget for. That is something you have to plan for ahead of time, because it's not inexpensive, and Medicare does not pay for it.
It doesn't. Insurance is something else. What do you feel about this? Is different for what you do. You see the senior living, meaning they had the senior community where they had these beautiful homes. We can live, I think you had to be maybe 55 or older, no kids, and no, was it school tax? Because those kids should be living there. I've seen some beautiful homes. And I said to myself, if I was moving to one, yeah, I would move into one if I wanted to, but I have a home already. But if I didn't, I would love to move into one of those. It looks so nice, and they get grass cut and community and no kid. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love kids. I love kids, but I like that peace and quiet.
Well,
I like
and what
peace.
most people stay in their own home until they get to a point where they don't want to have to maintain the home. So they don't want to have to fix the plumbing when it breaks. They don't want to have to maintain the yard. And as we get older, those things do become more difficult to do. And so, even changing light bulbs. My parents are 81, both of them, and not recently, but I went to visit my mom, and the light bulb was burnt out in the closet. And I was like, well, why haven't you changed the light bulb? And she's like, I'm not getting up on a step ladder to do that. So, little things like that we don't think about, that as we get older, just changing a light bulb becomes more difficult. And so when you move into a retirement community, like one of the ones you're describing, like the 55 plus, they do all that. They mow the yard. They change all the light bulbs. They do all the maintenance. And for a lot of people, that becomes very appealing when you don't want to have to maintain a house on a day-to-day basis.
I found people younger than seniors that would love to live a place like that too.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm like, sign me up. I don't want to have to keep doing
I
this.
want to cut all this grass and do all of this. I want the easy living, but still you have things you have to do. Right. Things you have to do. And let me ask you, when you were growing up, what did you think? No, I think we talked about that. When you were growing up, let's say you remember when you were like 13 years old or 14 years old, what did you think at that age what was old? Because you were young, like 13 or 14. What do you think was old? Like 30? Did you think that was old?
I'm
Were you
sure I
like
did. I mean, I don't honestly remember what I thought.
hmm
I mean, I am sure, like most young people, I I thought 30 was ancient.
Yeah.
You just,
Okay.
you have
Okay.
no concept when you're at that age what is actually old and what isn't. There's no date. Every day is a gift. Every year's a gift. There's no guarantee you're going to get any of it.
Right. No guarantee in life.
Well, and
Right. No guarantee.
that's why I think, like, as we think about growing older, it's kind of ridiculous that we have such negative stereotypes, such fear around it, because we are getting, we live longer now than people have ever lived before, and those extra years are a gift. They're not, they're not to be disparaged, because you're not guaranteed that, and previous generations did not get that.
Don't you think it started at home, the way you brought up, how you think about it? But then I know you go out, you have your friends and everything, but it starts at home. Do you
No, I
think?
mean, it does, but it's society. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
my
That's true.
12-year-old daughter, clearly I'm very pro aging, and I try to, anytime they say things that are negative, I try to question them and that sort of thing. And
Uh-huh.
my 12-year-old was telling me that Bruce Springsteen was a dirty old man, um, because of his age, and I'm like,
Right.
and I'm not telling her that. Who's
Right.
telling her that? She
True. True.
just
That's
learned
true.
that from society, and
True.
that's the thing. You have to fight against it. I mean, all you have to do is look at kids' storybooks. In kids' storybooks, older people are always scary old men or hags and witches. I mean, they're never there. There are very few loving grandparents in kids' storybooks. There are a few, but the vast majority of the portrayals of the older people are not good. And so we're telling kids from a very young age that growing older is not positive.
It's not, and that's when you have the disrespect, and that's when they don't want to grow old. Right, they don't want to grow old. What is the one thing people can do tomorrow to embrace the keen age mindset you described? What can they do tomorrow?
The biggest thing you need to do is realize that we're all ageist. We all have a bias against older people because we are living in a very ageist society. And that's not your fault. You're surrounded by it all the time. But fighting ageism starts on the inside. It starts with your own thoughts and starting to question, if you do think to yourself, I'm too old for that, why am I thinking that? Or, oh, I've got a wrinkle and it bothers me. Why does it bother me? What's going on? Why do I think that? And starting to question those things. And once you start paying attention to your own thoughts and to the ageism around you, you'll see that it's really everywhere. And fighting it starts with yourself. And that's how, if I can get you to think about it and to pay attention, that's how we start to change the story.
Very well said. Now, what's next for you, and how can people follow you and purchase your book?
Sure. So you can find me on my website, which is my name, CorinneAuman.com. And there you can purchase the book and find out more about me, and all my social media links and things are on there as well.
Well, Doctor, it has been a joy to have you. And you still a baby. Okay, you have a long way to go.
Well, but
Yep.
what's funny is I get reverse ageism, or not reverse, but I get ageism in the sense that people go, you're too young to care about ageism. Like, no, everyone should care about ageism, because guess what? I'm older today than I was yesterday. And if I want to be treated well as an older adult, if I don't like how older people are treated now, the only way to change that is for me to care about it today.
Very good. Excellent. But you still, you're still a baby. Well, I'm going to thank you for coming and showing your expertise today. Thank you so very much, okay?
Thank you.
For our viewers at home watching, if you like what you see, subscribe to The Jocelyn Moore Show. Want to be a guest on our show? Head over to our website, www.jmentertainment.info. On the homepage, click on About and follow directions to be a guest. If you have any questions about today's show or past or future shows, Just click contact on our website and submit a message. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care and keep watching.